Married to a 5-6-year-old duke, she cried all day, but on wedding night his confession shocked her. She walked down the aisle in tears, a bride sold to save her family. Then her elderly husband spoke words that shattered everything she believed. Hello, lovely. If you're drawn to stories of unexpected love, hearts that heal against all odds, and connections that defy every expectation, I'd be so grateful for a like or subscribe. It helps me bring you more tales of hope, redemption, and love that blooms in the most unlikely places. And if you're up for it, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every note, and it always brings light to my day. 1. Lady Evelina Grant stood in her childhood bedroom, staring at the wedding gown that hung like a death sentence against the wardrobe. White silk and Brussels lace, exquisite in its craftsmanship, beautiful in its detail. It should have made her feel like a princess. Instead, it felt like a shroud. She was 28 years old, and today she would marry a man she had met exactly 3 times. A man who was 56 years old, a man who could be her father. The carriage is ready, my lady. Her maid's voice was gentle, careful, as though Evelina might shatter at any moment. Perhaps she might. Evelina touched the gown with trembling fingers. This was not how she had imagined her wedding day. As a girl, she had dreamed of marrying for love, of finding a partner who valued her intelligence and independence. She had spent years cultivating her mind, reading philosophy and poetry, engaging in political discussions that shocked her mother and delighted her father. She had made a name for herself in society as a woman of substance, someone who could hold her own in any conversation. None of it mattered now. Her family's estate was drowning in debt. Her father's poor investments and her brother's gambling had brought them to the edge of ruin. Creditors circled like vultures. Without intervention, they would lose everything: the house, the lands, the legacy that had been in the Grant family for generations. Duke Reginald Hawthorne had offered that intervention. In exchange for Evelina's hand in marriage, he would pay all debts and restore the estate to solvency. It was a business transaction, pure and simple. Her youth and family name in exchange for his wealth and title. Evelina had protested. She had argued, pleaded, even threatened to run away. But her father had looked at her with such desperation, such hopelessness, that her resistance had crumbled. How could she let her family be destroyed when she had the power to save them? So she had agreed, and today she would pay the price. The maid helped her into the gown, fastening each button with practiced efficiency. Evelina looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Pale face, hollow eyes, lips pressed into a thin line. She looked like a ghost of herself. "You make a beautiful bride, my lady," the maid said softly. Evelina wanted to laugh at the lie, but she had no laughter left in her. The church was filled with guests. All of London society gathered to witness this spectacle. Evelina walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her vision blurred with unshed tears. She could feel every eye upon her, could hear the whispers that rustled like dead leaves. Such a shame marrying that old man. Her family must be truly desperate. The Duke is wealthy, but so cold. She'll have a miserable life. Evelina kept her gaze fixed on the altar, where Duke Reginald Hawthorne waited. He stood tall and straight despite his age, his silver hair neatly groomed, his face stern and unreadable. He wore his formal attire with military precision, every detail perfect. He looked like a statue carved from ice. This was the man who would be her husband. This stranger with cold grey eyes and a mouth that seemed to have forgotten how to smile. When Evelina reached the altar, her father placed her hand in the Duke's. His grip was firm, his skin surprisingly warm. She forced herself to look up at his face, searching for any hint of warmth or kindness. She found only duty reflected back at her. The vicar began the ceremony, his words washing over Evelina like water. She responded when required, her voice barely above a whisper. The Duke's responses were clear and steady, as though he were conducting business rather than making sacred vows. When the vicar pronounced them married, the Duke lifted Evelina's veil with careful precision. He leaned down and pressed a brief, formal kiss to her lips. It was cold, perfunctory, nothing like the passionate kisses she had once dreamed of. Applause filled the church, but it sounded distant to Evelina's ears, as though she were underwater. She was married now. The deed was done. There was no going back. The wedding breakfast passed in a blur. Evelina smiled when required, accepted congratulations from guests she barely saw, and moved through the motions of celebration like a puppet on strings. The Duke remained at her side, polite and distant, speaking only when necessary. "You handled yourself well," he said at one point, his tone neutral. "Society will approve." Evelina wanted to scream that she did not care about society's approval, that she cared about her life being traded away like property, but she simply nodded, too exhausted to argue. As the afternoon wore on, Evelina found herself watching the Duke when she thought he was not looking. He moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting well wishes with courteous nods, engaging in brief conversations that revealed nothing of his inner thoughts. He was impeccably mannered, impressively controlled, and completely unreachable. This was her future. A lifetime with a man who seemed to feel nothing, want nothing, need nothing. A man who had married her out of duty or convenience, or whatever calculation had led him to make this arrangement. When evening fell and the guests finally departed, Evelina found herself alone with her new husband in the carriage that would take them to his estate. Hawthorne Manor was a day's journey from London, and they would stay the night at his townhouse before travelling tomorrow. The silence in the carriage was oppressive. Evelina stared out the window, watching London pass by, and felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She tried to stop them, but they came anyway, born from exhaustion and grief and the crushing weight of her new reality. "You are crying," the Duke observed, his voice carefully neutral. "Yes." Evelina did not see the point in denying the obvious. "I suppose that is to be expected." His words, delivered with such detachment, broke something inside Evelina. She turned to face him, anger cutting through her despair. "Yes, Your Grace, it is to be expected. I have been sold like livestock to save my family from ruin. I am married to a man I do not know, do not love, and who is old enough to be my father. Forgive me if I find that cause for tears." The Duke's expression did not change, but something flickered in his grey eyes. "You speak plainly. I have nothing left to lose by honesty." "That is not true. You have a great deal to lose. Your position, your security, your family's future. All things I never wanted to trade for my freedom." "Freedom is a luxury few can afford," the Duke said quietly, "especially women of your station. Do not lecture me about my station, Your Grace. I am well aware of the cage society has built for women." "I am sure you are." He paused, studying her face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "You are quite different from what I expected." "And what did you expect? Some simpering girl grateful for the honour of your attention?" "Something like that, yes." "Then I am sorry to disappoint you." "I did not say I was disappointed." Evelina turned back to the window, too weary to continue the conversation. The townhouse appeared ahead, and she felt her chest tighten with dread. The wedding night awaited, one more duty to be endured. 2. The Duke's London townhouse was elegant and austere, much like the man himself. A servant showed Evelina to a large bedroom where her belongings had already been unpacked. The bed dominated the space, its size and presence impossible to ignore. Evelina dismissed the maid, who tried to help her undress. She needed solitude, needed space to prepare herself for what came next. She changed into her nightgown with mechanical efficiency, then sat at the vanity and began unpinning her hair. In the mirror, she looked young and frightened. She hated that. She had always prided herself on her strength, her independence. But tonight, she felt neither strong nor independent. She felt trapped. A knock at the door made her start. "Come in," she said, forcing steadiness into her voice. The Duke entered, now dressed in a dark robe over his nightshirt. He looked older in the soft lamplight, the lines around his eyes more pronounced. But there was something in his expression that had not been there before, uncertainty, perhaps, or something close to it. "I will not keep you long," he said, remaining near the door. "But there are things that must be said before this night proceeds." Evelina waited, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The Duke was silent for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice was different, quieter, more human. "I am aware that you did not choose this marriage, that you were forced into it by circumstance. I want you to know that I take no pleasure in that fact." "Then why agree to it?" Evelina asked. "Surely a man of your wealth and position could have his choice of willing brides." "Could I?" A bitter smile touched his lips. "I am 56 years old, Lady Evelina. Most women see me as ancient, as a relic from another generation. The young women society throws at me are either terrified or disgusted, masking their feelings behind false smiles. At least with you, I knew what I was getting, someone intelligent enough to understand the arrangement clearly." "How reassuring," Evelina said dryly. "I did not mean it to be reassuring. I meant it to be honest." He moved further into the room, though he maintained a respectful distance. "I married you not out of desire, but out of duty. Your father came to me desperate, and I remembered him as a good man who once did me a kindness. I felt obligated to help. Your family's future was secured, and I acquired a wife to satisfy society's expectations. It was a practical arrangement." "How romantic," Evelina said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "I am not a romantic man, Lady Evelina. I lost that capacity long ago." Something in his tone made Evelina look at him more closely. For the first time, she saw past the stern exterior to the exhaustion beneath. This was a man who carried weight she could not yet understand. "Your first wife," Evelina said carefully. "I know she died in childbirth. That must have been difficult." The Duke's face closed off immediately. Difficult is an inadequate word. "Then what word would you use?" "Devastating. Soul. Destroying. The end of everything I believed life could be." His voice was flat, but Evelina heard the pain beneath it. "Margaret was everything to me. When she died, when I held my stillborn son in my arms, something broke inside me that never healed. I became the man you see now, cold, practical, incapable of the softer emotions." Evelina felt unexpected compassion stir in her chest. She had been so focused on her own suffering that she had not considered his. "I regret," the Duke continued, "that I have married you so late in my life, that I can offer you nothing of warmth or passion or the romantic notions young women deserve. You are right to cry, right to mourn what you have lost. I have taken from you the possibility of a marriage built on love." "Why are you telling me this?" Evelina asked. "Because you deserve honesty. Because I saw the pain in your eyes during the ceremony, and I understand it. Because I want you to know that while I cannot give you love, I can give you respect. Your intelligence, your independence, these things will not be suppressed in my house. You will have freedom to pursue your interests, to live as you choose within the bounds of propriety. Evelina stared at him, caught off guard by his unexpected openness. She had expected coldness, demands, perhaps even cruelty. This vulnerable honesty was something else entirely. "What about tonight?" she asked quietly. "What do you expect of me?" The Duke's expression softened slightly. "Nothing you are not willing to give. I am not a monster, Evelina. I will not force myself upon an unwilling bride. We are married, yes, but that does not give me ownership of your body or your heart." Relief flooded through Evelina so powerfully that tears sprang to her eyes again. "Thank you," she whispered. "Do not thank me for basic decency." He moved toward the door, then paused. "I know you did not want this marriage, but perhaps, in time, we can find a way to make it bearable, for both of us." He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Evelina sat in stunned silence, her mind reeling. This was not how she had expected the evening to unfold. The Duke was not the heartless old man she had imagined. He was something more complicated, a man carrying his own grief, his own regrets, trying to navigate a situation neither of them had wanted. As Evelina finally climbed into the vast bed, she felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first stirring of understanding. They were both prisoners of circumstance, both trying to survive the hand fate had dealt them. Maybe that was enough to build on. Maybe. 3. The days following the wedding settled into an awkward routine. Evelina and Duke Reginald travelled to Hawthorne Manor, a sprawling estate in the countryside that was as imposing as its owner. They maintained polite distance, speaking when necessary, but otherwise occupying separate spheres. Evelina spent her mornings in the library, which she discovered with delight. The Duke's collection was extensive and eclectic philosophy, history, poetry, scientific treatises. She lost herself in books, grateful for the escape they provided. The Duke spent most of his time managing estate business, meeting with his steward, reviewing accounts. Evelina rarely saw him during the day, and their dinners together were marked by stilted conversation about weather and mundane matters. But Evelina began noticing things. Small details that did not fit her image of the cold, heartless Duke. She observed him with the estate staff. He knew their names, asked after their families, listened attentively to their concerns. When the groundskeeper's daughter fell ill, the Duke immediately sent for the best physician and covered all costs. She saw him with his tenants. He was fair in his dealings, lowering rents when harvests were poor, ensuring families had enough to survive difficult winters. The people who worked his lands respected him, even seemed to genuinely like him. One afternoon, Evelina walked through the village near the estate and witnessed the Duke speaking with an elderly woman whose cottage roof needed repair. He not only arranged for immediate repairs, but stayed to help carry supplies himself, despite his age and station. Evelina found herself confused. This man, who claimed to have no capacity for softer emotions, seemed to care deeply for those under his protection. His actions spoke of compassion, even when his words remained formal and distant. 3 weeks into their marriage, Evelina found herself in the study one evening, searching for a specific volume she had been reading. The Duke was there, working at his desk, and she had assumed he would not notice her presence. "The Rousseau is on the 3rd shelf, left side," he said without looking up. Evelina paused. "How did you know what I was looking for?" "You have been reading through the philosophical texts systematically. Rousseau would be next in your progression. You have been paying attention to my reading habits. I pay attention to most things that happen in my house. He set down his pen and looked at her properly. Have you found the library satisfactory? More than satisfactory. Your collection is remarkable. You may add to it if you wish. I noticed you favour the romantic poets, but my collection is lacking in that area. The offer surprised her. Thank you, that is generous. It is practical. A wife should have access to materials that interest her. They stood in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Then Evelina heard herself asking, May I ask you something? You may ask. I cannot promise to answer. Why do you pretend to be colder than you are? The Duke's expression flickered with surprise. What makes you think I am pretending? I have seen how you treat your staff, your tenants, the villagers. You claim to have no capacity for warmth, yet your actions are consistently kind. Kindness is duty, not emotion. I take care of those under my protection because it is proper to do so. I think you are lying, Evelina said boldly. I think you care more than you admit. The Duke was silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, Caring leads to pain, Lady Evelina. I learned that lesson thoroughly. Your first wife. Yes. He stood and walked to the window, his back to her. Margaret was my entire world. When I lost her, when I held our dead son, I thought I would die from the grief. I wanted to die. For months I was barely functional. The pain was so immense that I could not bear it. I am sorry, Evelina said softly. So I built walls. I decided that if I could not feel joy, then I would also not feel pain. I would fulfill my duties, maintain my responsibilities, but I would not allow myself to care deeply about anything again. It was survival, Lady Evelina, not cruelty, but self-preservation. Evelina moved closer, drawn by the raw honesty in his voice. And has it worked? Are you happier for building those walls? Happiness is irrelevant. I am functional. I survive. That is enough. Is it? The Duke turned to face her, and Evelina saw something in his eyes she had not seen before, a desperate loneliness that mirrored her own. Why do you ask these questions? He asked. Why do you care? Because I am married to you, Evelina said simply. Because my life is bound to yours whether I chose it or not, and because I am beginning to think that you are not the man I believed you to be. What kind of man did you believe me to be? A cold, heartless aristocrat who saw me as property. But you are not that, are you? You are a man in pain, hiding behind duty because feeling anything real terrifies you. The accuracy of her words seemed to strike him physically. He looked away, his jaw tight. You see too much. Perhaps you show more than you realize. They stood in the quiet study, the air between them charged with something new, understanding perhaps, or the beginning of it. Evelina felt her resentment softening, transforming into something more complex. She was still angry about the circumstances of their marriage, but she was starting to see the Duke not as her captor, but as a fellow prisoner. I should let you return to your work, Evelina said finally. Wait, the Duke's voice stopped her at the door. Would you join me for tea tomorrow? Not as a formal obligation, but simply to talk. I find your company less burdensome than I expected. It was perhaps the most awkward compliment Evelina had ever received, but something about his hesitant delivery made her smile. I would like that. As she left the study, Evelina realized something had shifted between them. The walls were still there, but cracks were beginning to form, and through those cracks, light was starting to seep in. 4. Tea became a daily ritual. At first, the conversations were careful, circling around safe topics, books, philosophy, current events. But gradually, they deepened. The Duke revealed himself to be remarkably well-read and intellectually curious. He did not condescend to Evelina's intelligence, but engaged with her as an equal. They debated political reforms over afternoon tea. They discussed art and literature during evening walks through the estate gardens. They discovered a shared love of astronomy and spent one memorable night on the terrace, mapping constellations. Evelina found herself laughing at the Duke's dry wit, which emerged more frequently as he grew comfortable in her presence. He, in turn, seemed to relax around her, his stern expression softening into something approaching warmth. One rainy afternoon, they were in the music room. Evelina had been playing the pianoforte, unaware the Duke had entered until she finished the piece. "That was beautiful," he said from the doorway. "Chopin?" "Yes. Do you know his work?" Margaret used to play Chopin. She loved the nocturnes especially. Evelina expected him to retreat, to close off as he usually did when mentioning his first wife. Instead, he moved further into the room. "I have not heard music in this room since she died. I had the pianoforte covered, could not bear to see it. But hearing you play just now, it was not painful. It was pleasant." "I am glad," Evelina said softly. "Music should bring joy, not grief. You are teaching me that life does not have to be endured, that there can be moments of genuine pleasure again." He sat beside her on the piano bench, and Evelina was acutely aware of his proximity. Over the weeks, she had grown accustomed to his presence, but this closeness was different, intimate in a way that made her heart beat faster. "Play something else," he said quietly. "Please." Evelina played, and the Duke listened, and something tender grew in the space between them. When she finished, he took her hand gently. "Evelina, I want you to know that you have given me something I thought lost forever. Hope, the possibility that life might hold meaning again." Evelina looked at their joined hands, at the way his fingers wrapped around hers with such care. "You have given me something too," she admitted. "You have shown me that this marriage need not be a prison, that respect and companionship can grow even from the strangest beginnings." They sat together in the music room as rain drummed against the windows, neither quite ready to name what was happening between them. But both felt it, the slow, tentative blooming of something that might, eventually, become love. The Duke began seeking Evelina's company more deliberately. He invited her to review estate business with him, valuing her insights on management decisions. He arranged for her to meet with local charitable organizations, knowing she had always wanted to engage in meaningful work. He encouraged her intellectual pursuits, even arranging for a prominent philosopher to visit so Evelina could engage in the kinds of discussion she loved. One evening, as they walked through the gardens in the soft twilight, the Duke said, "You have made Hawthorne Manor feel alive again. I had not realized how dead it had become until you brought light back into it." "I think it was always alive," Evelina replied. "You had simply stopped seeing it." "Perhaps, but you opened my eyes." He stopped walking and turned to face her. In the fading light, his grey eyes held warmth she never thought possible. "Evelina, I know this marriage began as a transaction, but these past weeks, getting to know you, seeing your kindness and intelligence and strength, I find myself grateful for it, grateful for you." Evelina's throat tightened. "I am grateful too. Though I fought this marriage with everything I had, I am beginning to think fate knew better than I did." "Do you believe in fate?" "I am starting to." The Duke smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his stern face completely. "You continue to surprise me." "Good. Life should have surprises." As they walked back to the manor, hands brushing occasionally, Evelina realized something that both thrilled and terrified her. She was falling in love with her husband. This man she had resented, feared, even hated in those first desperate days, had become someone precious to her. His quiet strength, his hidden kindness, his wounded heart that was slowly learning to trust again, all of it called to something deep within her. The question was whether she was brave enough to admit it. 5. Autumn arrived at Hawthorne Manor, painting the grounds in gold and crimson. Evelina had been married for 2 months, and the estate had truly become her home. But lately she noticed the Duke growing distant again. Not in the cold, formal way of their early days, but with a preoccupied anxiety that worried her. He spent long hours in his study, often late into the night. Their conversations grew shorter. He seemed to be pulling away just when she thought they were growing closer. Finally, Evelina could bear it no longer. She found him one evening in the garden, sitting on a stone bench beneath the stars, his expression troubled. "You have been avoiding me," she said, settling beside him without invitation. Not avoiding, merely thinking. About what? The Duke was silent for so long that Evelina thought he would not answer. Then he said, "About the future, about what you deserve that I cannot give you." "I do not understand." "Evelina, you are 28 years old. You have decades of life ahead of you. I am 56. If I am lucky, I have perhaps 20 years left. More likely, less. We cannot know the future, but we can be realistic about it. I am already old, and I will only grow older. Meanwhile, you will still be young, vibrant, full of life. I fear—" his voice broke slightly. "I fear the day you wake up and realize you are shackled to a man who cannot keep pace with you, who cannot give you children, who cannot offer you the passionate romance young women dream of." Evelina stared at him, finally understanding his recent distance. "You think I will leave you? I think you will regret choosing to stay." "I did not choose this marriage initially," Evelina said carefully. "But I am choosing to stay now. That is the difference." "You say that now, but in 5 years, 10 years, when I am truly elderly and you are still in your prime." "Do you want to know what I see when I look at you?" Evelina interrupted. "I see a man who has shown me more respect than any of the young suitors who once called on me. I see intelligence that matches my own, kindness that runs deep despite your attempts to hide it, and strength born from surviving devastating loss. Your age has given you wisdom, patience, and perspective that younger men lack." "Evelina, I am not finished." She took his hand, holding it firmly. "These past 2 months you have given me something I never had: true partnership. You listen to my thoughts, value my opinions, encourage my interests. You see me not as an ornament or a burden, but as an equal. Do you understand how rare that is? But I cannot give you passion, romance, the things young women want. I do not want those things from you. I want what we have been building: respect, companionship, understanding. And if I am being completely honest, I want more of it. Because somewhere in these weeks of getting to know you, I fell in love with you." The Duke's breath caught. "What did you say?" "I love you, Reginald." Using his first name felt intimate, significant. "I fought it, told myself it was impossible, that you could never care for me that way. But I cannot deny it any longer. I love your quiet strength, your hidden kindness, your brilliant mind. I love the way you look at the stars, the way you treat your people, the way you have slowly let me past your walls. I love all of you, including the parts you think make you unworthy." Tears shone in the Duke's eyes. "I do not deserve you. Stop deciding what I deserve. Let me choose for myself. And I choose you. Not because I am trapped or obligated, but because you have become the most important person in my world." "I am terrified," Reginald whispered, "of loving you and losing you as I lost Margaret, of opening my heart again, only to have it destroyed. Love is always a risk, but the alternative is spending the rest of our lives protecting ourselves from feeling anything real. Is that truly how you want to live? No. He cupped her face with shaking hands. No, I want to live, truly live, with you. Then trust me. Trust that I know my own heart, that I understand the choice I am making. Your age does not frighten me, Reginald. Losing the chance to love you does. He kissed her then, and it was nothing like the cold, formal kiss at their wedding. This was tender and desperate and full of years of loneliness, finally finding comfort. Evelina kissed him back, pouring all her newfound love into the gesture. When they pulled apart, both were crying, but the tears were joyful. I love you, Reginald said, his voice thick with emotion. I have been falling in love with you for weeks, but I was too afraid to admit it, too convinced that I was too old, too damaged, too broken to deserve your love. We are both broken in our own ways, Evelina said. But maybe broken things fit together better. Maybe our cracks align perfectly. They sat together beneath the stars, hands intertwined, and Evelina felt a peace she had never known. This was not the marriage she had dreamed of as a girl. It was better. It was real. What do we do now? Reginald asked. We live. We build a life together based on what we have found. Respect, trust, love. We face whatever years we have, side by side, as true partners. I like that plan. They walked back to the manor hand in hand, no longer two strangers bound by obligation, but two souls who had found unexpected love in the most unlikely circumstances. The future was uncertain. Age would take its toll, but they would face it together. And that was enough. It was everything. If this story of unexpected love, healing hearts, and connections that defy expectations touched you, please show your support with a like or subscribe. Your engagement helps me bring you more tales of hope, redemption, and love that blooms against all odds. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. What did you think of Evelina and Reginald's journey? Did their slow burn love give you hope? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I treasure hearing which moments resonated with you. Until our next story, dear listeners, may you find the courage to open your heart even when it feels impossible. This is your storyteller, reminding you that love has no age limit, no timeline, and no rules. It simply is, when two hearts are brave enough to reach for it.